Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're just going to give everybody about 30 seconds or so to find their registration links, get into the room, and everything else. But hopefully, everyone can hear us okay. Always kind of a useful start point to make sure you can hear us. If you can see Tamryn and I, just pop something in the chat box. Tell us where you're joining us from this morning while we just wait for everybody to find their way in. It also means I can test the chat box and make sure it's working. So when you have all of those questions in a while, we can answer them. Great, excellent stuff's coming into chat. So that's all good. Thank you for taking time to join us today. Really good to have you with us. We are going to be talking about being ready for remote working, and Tammin, who's joining me this morning, who will introduce herself in a moment. We were just chatting a moment ago about how critical it is that if you're going on this path to using remote resource, that you are actually ready, because this is a real change in the way that you work. Remote working creates huge opportunities for us, but it's different, and therefore we have to adapt and think about how we make it as robust and as likely to succeed as we possibly can. Tammin is going to be taking you through that this morning. So wherever you are, whether you're considering remote working, whether you're there already, I'm really confident that Tammin is going to give you some really practical tips to make this work effectively in your firms. So let's get cracking. So firstly, anybody that doesn't know me, my name is Will Farnell. I wear a number of different hats. Today, I'm here as co-founder and director of App Advisory Plus. We are a directory platform, educational content platform, helping accountants and bookkeepers choose the right technology, not only for your own firm, but also for the clients that you support as well. I'm a partner at TC Group. My firm, Farnell Clark, joined TC Group back in March, and I work with a number of accountants and bookkeepers in a mentoring capacity, running both group and one-to-one coaching. So plenty to keep me busy. Delighted to have Tamryn with me today. I've known Tamryn for probably 4 or 5 years now, I would think. Tamryn, isn't it? Something like that, I would imagine. And Tamryn's got a huge amount of knowledge and experience in this area of remote working. So delighted that Tamryn's joining us today. Tamryn, do you want to do a quick introduction in terms of who you are?
Yes, sure, with pleasure. So I actually think I have, there we go, more detail on the next slide. So I started my accounting firm in 2007, so which makes me a firm owner for 18 years, but I've been in the profession for 24, as the slide says. And my accounting firm has been 100% remote working from day one, not because I was innovative and forward thinking, but because I was broke and couldn't afford an office. But it has turned out to work in my favor. And then we've been 100% digital since 2017. So all of that combined helped me to open Human Age Resourcing, where I now help other accounting firm owners find top talent and work remotely. And I have 3 years experience now in that capacity, placing really good accounting placements with firms in the UK, and of course trying to make the remote work work. That is me.
And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And interestingly, clearly, all of the best firms are founded in 2007, Tamrin,
Clearly.
because I set my firm up in 2007 as well. So that's a really important fact for everybody today. During session today, we are going to be talking about, well, firstly, does remote working actually work? Tamrin will answer that. Um, Assuming that Tammin convinces us that it does, and I'm sure she will, we're going to take you through three components really of how you make remote work actually work. So being practically ready, being contractually and compliance ready, and ultimately being work ready. So that's the structure of the way we're going to take you through the session. Please, please, please do ask questions. You've got Tammin's wisdom and expertise here, so do ask questions as we go through. I'll keep an eye on the Q&A box. We've got a chat box and a Q&A box. So use the chat box for kind of any general comments. If you've got specific questions, pop them in a Q&A, and we'll make sure we pick those up and answer those for you as we go through the session. Um, so are you all set, Tamryn? Are we ready to go?
We
So,
are
so
ready. Yes.
before you answer this question, I think we just need to kind of set the scene a little bit here because um, certainly when I talk to UK firms and we talk about the possibility of remote work, the mind kind of automatically flips to offshoring or outsourcing. And I think it's important to say today that we're not just talking about offshoring and outsourcing, are we? We're talking about the challenges that we face as a profession here in the UK. Resource is tough. It's tough finding good people. We've got a budget tomorrow, and it's probably going to get more expensive again to recruit staff. You talked about the cost of office space and everything else. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that creates challenges in terms of building an in-house workforce. So the point here is that this is about widening the pool, isn't it? So it could be we're in
Correct.
Norwich, we might recruit somebody in Liverpool
Mhm.
to work with us. The principles are the same, aren't they?
100%, yes. And it's not just if it's in a different part of the UK, it's also they could live down the road from you, but if they want to work from home and they're a better candidate than the next person, you might still want to be providing them with that option. So it's definitely about opening your options as a firm owner, not just sending the work overseas.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So just kind of making that point, everybody, that we're not necessarily saying this is just about offshoring. It's just thinking about how can you make remote working work for you. So you put the question on this slide, Tamrin, does remote work actually work?
Well, that's more my title. We have to go to the next line to discuss why we're looking at remote work at all, because I
Yeah.
think that yeah, we've kind of discussed that now, but it is important to talk about why remote work is important. And essentially, it goes down to the fact that the world has changed. It's not operating the way it used to. The COVID pandemic changed things a lot, in some ways good, in some ways bad. One of the most pervasive changes from our work perspective is that people got used to working at home. They got a taste for working at home, and many people want to stay working at home. So on the left-hand side of the slide, we have stats from a Forbes survey where a staggering 98% of employees actually want the option of remote work at least part of the time, if not all the time. 65% of hybrid employees actually want to be remote more often than they are. 57% would actually look for a new job if their employers force them to return to office. And 71% say that being remote helps their work-life balance, which obviously is an important consideration when you're looking to attract and retain staff. And it becomes even more important when we consider a worldwide talent problem in the accounting profession. We are having a bit of a skills shortage at the moment. And we've got more stats on the side about that, which I don't have to read to you, but essentially we are battling to get good staff. UK firms in 2022, they had to turn down work because they didn't have enough staff to handle it. And they are, generally speaking, 22% understaffed. So this is why we're looking at the remote work and why it's important to make it work. So it's here to stay, which I think is the next slide. Will
And just before we go on to that, I mean that 98% of employees want to work from home seems
mm-hmm.
seems astonishing.
Well,
I mean,
it's
what's the research?
98% of surveyed employees, which you can
Okay.
never really trust surveys 100%. That's stats for you. They can always work whichever way you want to make them work.
Yeah.
But yes, 98% of surveyed employees, and those are in professional industries. So some will be accounting, some will be law, some will be IT.
Yeah.
That spread of
And I guess the
personality.
fact that it says want to work from home, it doesn't stipulate that they want to be 100% remote. This is just
No.
an element of choice and flexibility
Yes.
in terms of how we do this.
Correct. Yes, yes. In
Yeah.
fact, quite a few of the 98% were happy with a hybrid option. They
Okay.
just wanted the ability to work from home, and it is like you just said, it's for flexibility.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So next slide.
So essentially, yes, remote workers are not your temporary fix. They are our future normal, especially in our profession. The accounting profession is particularly leaning towards wanting to work from home. Not every single one, obviously, but there is generalizing here. A lot of accountants are introverts.
Yep.
And introverts do tend to want to work in their own space, under their own rules, in their own time, without the distractions of an office. So you are finding a greater and greater uptake of remote working positions in the accounting industry specifically.
And I mean, if we're going to go on to this, just tell me and I'll shut up. But how do we as employers kind of manage this though? Because there is all of the talk around the fact that we learn by osmosis, we the water cooler moments, and all of these things that I look back to kind of people that I've brought into my firm in the very early days, and sitting in a room where they listened to me talk to a client on the phone, was a really valuable way that they learned because they heard me talking about whatever the question was around should I buy a car for the company or not. So you learn from listening to those kind of conversations, and are we at risk of kind of losing that, and what's the role of employers to try and tackle that?
So, excellent question. You can actually, if you want to just go to the next slide, because before I'm getting into how if making remote work, we do want to look at pros and cons.
Yeah,
And okay, we've only got the pros on the slide right now,
I'll
but
put them both on.
actually,
There we go.
there we go. One of the cons is specifically the fact that young people are actually not getting the mentoring that they need. So if
Yeah.
you're entering the workforce for the first time and you do so in a remote capacity, it's actually detrimental for your experience as a professional. You're not learning how to operate in an office. You're not learning how to operate as a professional in a work environment. Many of these people coming straight from school, straight from varsity, they've never had any work experience at all. Their only knowledge of how an office works is from watching TV. And
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain most of us do not want our young interns behaving like American interns, which is what they've been watching. So
Yeah.
it is definitely one of the cons and one of the challenges that we face, because you do have to set things up, and that is why my biggest well, the next point, but we don't want to go there just yet, is in order for remote work to actually work, and not just for your employees, but for you as the employer, you have to plan it. It
Mm.
has to be set up in such a way that you've thought through these things. What do I do with a brand new employee? How am I going to do their onboarding? How am I going to do their ongoing training, their skills development, their mentoring? All of those things have to be planned, whereas beforehand they were pretty much done on the fly.
Yeah. Okay. So should we go through these pros and cons then, Tamrin? So
Well, well, we can do them very. I mean, if we look at the left, I can give you a really good summary. Is that remote workers are on average more productive. They tend to have better mental health and balance, which means they don't burn out as easily, which in our industry is particularly important. Not on the screen is the fact that in the accounting industry, 99% of surveyed professionals have gone through burnout at least once in their career. So
Mm.
being able to balance mental health is actually a very big benefit. And of course, it results in them making fewer mistakes. We've got 40% fewer mistakes by
Yeah.
remote workers because they're not distracted, 41% less absenteeism, the employee turnover reduces, your impact on the environment reduces, and your costs reduce. So all of those
Yeah.
are fantastic pros, but they do need to be balanced against the other side, which
And
my first, yeah.
no, carry on, Tamryn. Sorry, carry on.
The first one to point out is that it's not for everyone. We have
Yeah.
different personalities in the office. And like I said, in general, accountants are introverts and they do like the option to work from home. But even introverts living alone can suffer from isolation.
Mm.
And that is something that has to be taken into account when you're looking at your staff and you're deciding whether this is something you want to offer, along with the where they are in their work journey and their career development and how much mentoring they're going to need. And then we actually mentioned this right at the beginning in our intro, but most people, when they think remote work, think outsourcing or offshoring, which can
Mm.
impede your local talent progression and growth. You want to be increasing the skills in your local area. You don't just want to be sending that work overseas just because you can.
Yeah.
We want to
Yeah.
be developing the youth and developing the next generation of accountants. So that is definitely a challenge, along with a weakened company culture. And then exact opposite of the mental health pro is the fact that our overachievers actually battle to draw the line between work and home if they are
Yes.
working remotely, and they then burn out more easily. So all of these things have to be looked at as a whole before you can just implement a remote work policy and think that it's going to be good for your
Yeah.
firm.
Because the one that jumps out at me is the productivity. And it may just be an aging cynic, and we look at this and we have these uh kind of views and beliefs based on years and years of in office working, I guess, in terms of um how can somebody possibly be almost 40% more productive when they're in an environment that they're not being watched and monitored in the way they would be within an office environment. And surely the distractions of working at home are too big a draw to kind of think, oh, well, I'll just go and take the dog for a walk or whatever. And I guess the
Mm.
argument is that ability to do those kind of things are some of the things that mean we get better mental health and everything else. But it's like we have to change our perception of what work looks like, perhaps to kind of get that. Because I mean, I I may not be the right person to be thinking about here because I'm not introverted. I'm pretty extroverted and easily distracted and all of the other things. So I'm probably not somebody that's good for being a remote worker. And maybe my own views are kind of distorting my view of the majority of people that might be working in accounting roles. But like we've got to change our mindset here, haven't we? If we're going to buy into this.
Yes and no, because you're not wrong.
Okay,
So,
good.
that mindset should, and that's why I say you've got a plan, because you've
Yeah.
got a plan for a personality such as yours, who
Mm,
would maybe like to be with people, who's going
yeah.
to be drawn towards a distraction at home, and that's actually part of the planning process. Is how do I monitor work progress? How do I monitor productivity? Not necessarily hours on a
Yeah.
screen,
Yeah.
because I mean, even in an office, I'll be very honest. In my first employment, I worked for a very small business, and it was in commerce, so it was only the one company that I had to look after, and it was
Mm,
tiny, and that means that I was only really busy 5 days of the month,
yeah.
truly.
Mm.
The rest of the month, I played solitaire because I was bored out of my mind. So when you look at a situation like that, I would have been more productive at home, 100%, because I would have
Yeah.
got my work done and then gone and done my own thing.
Yeah.
But obviously, an accounting firm is got a much higher workload that has to be processed, and it's
Yeah.
different. But if you're looking at in terms of outcomes and how you measure the outcomes, a person can be sitting in an office chair and doing nothing,
Yeah.
and they can be sitting in a chair at home and doing nothing. So it's
Yeah.
really about how you're measuring the productivity. And in terms of hours, I think the reason for the productivity jump, the main reason, is the lack of office distractions. So we're
Mm.
probably in, if we're looking at the statistics here, you're probably looking at hardworking, dedicated employees and their
Yeah.
productivity jump.
Yeah.
And the stats, I know that these are old stats, but I think they're still quite relevant, is that a hardworking employee actually only gets 5 hours of work done in an 8 hour day.
Yeah.
And the reason is because of water cooler moments and
Yeah.
coffee breaks and smoke
Yes.
breaks and trips outside and meetings and someone walking past your desk and starting a conversation. And so that's why the productivity jumps. But at the same time, some of those things are really good for mental health and
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah. Mm. Okay.
So
Got it. Right. All about the planning to get that productivity.
pretty much, which is why we're here. Nothing works without proper planning. I mean, whether that's a remote policy or your actual workflow or how you service a client, how you do your quality management, nothing works if you haven't planned it properly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what remote work comes down to,
Okay.
100%.
And that's what we're going to look at now.
That is it, yes. So there are three aspects that we look at if we're going to help people get remote ready. It's the practical considerations, which are basically, do you have everything in place for your remote worker to physically do their job? That would be things like software and hardware and your cybersecurity issues and all the tools that they would need to do the job. Are you legally ready in terms of having a proper remote work policy? Have you got that covered in your employment contracts and your ways of working and all of those things? Are they legal? Are they following your labor laws? Do your employees understand them? Have you put things in place to make sure that you are aligning with all your government's requirements as well as employment requirements? And then are you productively ready? And that's where I think your questions from the last slide come in is how are you managing your tasks, your time, your workflow? How are you managing calendars? How are you measuring performance? How are you measuring relationships? How are you causing that
Yeah.
engagement?
Yeah.
So
And of course that's all stuff that we should be focused on, and certainly my work with accountants, even where you have an in-office team, some of those things are often weak. So it's this idea that I think you mentioned it before we came on, Tamryn, that some of this is actually about identifying weaknesses in current structures and current approaches, and actually if this stuff isn't working when we've got people sitting in our office where we can watch what they're doing all day, there's no chance it's going to work when we lose that kind of oversight and visibility. So regardless of whether you're looking at remote working, these are things that are fundamentally critical to running a good and successful accounting firm anyway,
yes.
regardless of where your staff's sitting.
Particularly the third column,
That's
because
what I
if
mean. Yeah.
you, yeah, even if you're not interested in remote work at all, you will improve your firm's productivity and profitability if you just review that last
Yeah.
column.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that's worth taking the time to think through and plan for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. So shall we start with practically ready?
Yes. So especially, I think this is where you're going to come in a lot here, Will, with app advisory, because this is where the software and tools are important. And I know my first the point there is access. So how is a remote worker going to access the things they need for their work? And we've got the option of being in the cloud or using a remote server. I think these days cloud is becoming a no-brainer with MTD looming. um, I personally am very surprised at how many firms are not in the cloud yet with
Yeah,
all
it's
the
massive. It's massive. I mean, I talk about this regularly, and I still believe we're at 20 to 30% tops adoption of basic cloud accounting technology in the UK market, which is astonishing given we started doing it in 2009, so 16 years ago. And people talk about AI at the moment and what AI is going to do. And my challenge back is always, well, we've got firms that are not even using bank feeds, and they're not using data capture tools. So do we really believe that they're going to flick a switch and all start using artificial intelligence? I just can't see it. So anyway, I digress. Carry on, Tamron.
No, well, I think that's my point is pretty much the same. You can set up a remote setup with a server. I mean, when I registered Farsight and started running an account, okay, well, it was only me in the beginning, so that was easy. Remote
Yeah,
office by yourself is easy, but when I started adding staff members, we literally had to use Dropbox to send
mm,
legacy software backups back and forth between each other and clients. And then you have to be so strict about your timing because you want to open the correct backup and you want to know did this person work in the backup, or am I implementing the wrong backup? It was interesting, to say the
mm,
least. The remote
yeah,
servers are better than that because at least you're all working off the same core version of
yeah,
the software. But I think from my own personal experience, and I know that you definitely carry this torch, that the cloud software is just unrivaled in
yeah,
terms of
yes,
ease of use and how it speeds up everything for a firm is
yes.
just amazing.
Yeah. And as we move towards kind of that ability to utilize the cloud for hosting our tech infrastructure. You've got software in here, so that whole idea about remote working and visibility. So the days of the spreadsheets, I mean, even spreadsheets are slightly more workable as a solution now. You can put them on SharePoint, or on Google Docs or whatever, where multiple people can work on them in the same time. But the visibility around kind of practice management, so everybody's got access to that single client record almost, in terms of where do we hold everything that we have on a client in one place that's accessible by anybody
Mm-hmm.
wherever they are, wherever they're
Mm-hmm.
they're sitting. It's this technology that's enabled the viability of remote working, clearly.
It absolutely it has in it, but it also ties into that third pillar and just if you're not even thinking of remote and how you run your firm, it's to be able to, even if you're all sitting in an office, if you all have access to that single client file, the single client history of conversations, who spoke to them last, what did you say, what did the client want, has the client complained about a specific thing more than once, so we all know not to send emails in, because they want to be phoned or whatever the case might be, that is something that I feel cloud technology has really made easy. And
Yes.
it just in general, if you're running an accounting firm, it's a very hard and stressful thing to run an
Yeah.
accounting firm.
Yes.
I know all of our attendees. I can't see a single one, and I know they're all nodding. It is hard and stressful to run an accounting firm, and anything that will make that simpler for you, anything that can give you that overview of what is happening with any staff member, with any client at any moment in time, that is powerful. That is
Yeah.
a really powerful simplification tool. And yes, it's made remote working a lot easier, but it just makes owning an accounting firm much easier.
Yeah.
So um,
Yeah.
definitely a proponent for cloud and for using multiple apps and tools and the different types of softwares to create your own environment, your own digital ecosystem that works for your firm. I think
Yeah.
it's very, very powerful as an accounting owner.
Yeah. Excellent. Got a question that probably relates to the third pillar. So we can either look at that now, Tamrin, or we can answer that when we get to the kind of the work ready? What's your preference?
Uh, let's let's um, let's answer it now. Let's
Okay,
answer it now.
so it said I like to trend towards building employee autonomy, which requires some removal, reduction of control, e.g., measure and process activity less. And remote work is a enabler of that autonomy. So, what do you think some red lines are for this autonomy, e.g., regulatory requirements, and how can the risk be managed when employees are completely remote? So, I guess the question here is around we like giving employees more autonomy. Um, but where are the risks associated with that? What are the things that we need to do to kind of manage that autonomy, I guess, isn't being abused? So hopefully, Philip, I've kind of paraphrased that in the way that you wanted the question asked. So what's our process of balancing greater autonomy with ensuring that that isn't abused when people are invisible in terms of they're not sitting in the office.
Yeah, I think again, I think this is something that can be implemented in an office as well, because one of the greatest causes of employee unhappiness in an office is micromanagement, which is someone looking over their shoulder. So you want to give autonomy either way without looking like you are running around with a checklist and managing them on a micro basis. So I think from that perspective, you want to have planned out for your staff and for your clients your outcomes. You need to have specific outcomes for your work, and those in our profession, they are very much tied to deadlines. So and when it comes to giving staff autonomy, I think it's from your own perspective as a manager. You need to know at what point do you want your staff to let you know something is finished, so that there is still time for review and for mistakes to be corrected long before your deadline is looming. So it's very much a question of managing a workflow rather than managing the employee directly. What is the flow? What is the timing of that workflow? And then at what point along that line is your employee supposed to be letting you know something's done, or are you supposed to be checking in to see something is done? I think having that big picture helps to provide autonomy in between, but you
Mm.
both actually feel that there's guidelines in place, there's safety guards in case
Yeah.
something goes wrong. And that's how I feel you would manage your risk from a work perspective. Right in pillar one, we have the mention of cybersecurity and protocols and insurance, because when it comes to remote work specifically, you do have a new risk for your firm in terms of the fact that your remote workers are now sitting outside of your office, and you're not necessarily controlling their internet connection, you're not controlling their equipment, you're not controlling who accesses the room in which that equipment is kept. And all of these things are things we actually do need to bear in mind as firm owners who are letting people work from home. Generally speaking, I would say accountants are not well versed in cybersecurity. A lot of
Yeah.
firm owners are, because we need to be, but your employees don't think about the fact that there are actually people out there trying to get into their computer, because accounting firms specifically have access to a wealth of personal and financial information. We are wonderful targets for cyber criminals. They can get
Mm.
far more from us than they can from a big bank. Generally speaking, your small accounting firm does not have the security protocols they need. You have
Mm.
not trained your staff the way you should. And I mean, when we're talking about in an office, we are prime targets for cyber criminals. So that becomes even weaker now if someone's sitting at home. So it's also about understanding the risk in terms of cybersecurity, in terms of privacy, in terms of sharing, and making sure that you've got those protocols in place in your documents with your staff, that you've given them training on what they should and shouldn't do in those
Yeah.
environments. I mean, just as an example, the Farside staff know very clearly that they are not supposed to access free Wi-Fi anywhere. So if they're going to go work at a coffee shop or they're going to go work at a virtual office, they have to use their Wi-Fi that we pay for that is password protected. And we know that the password is 30 digits long and horrendous and probably had to be memorized somewhere in a book, because that's that you don't want your to be, what's the word I'm looking for? You don't want to be putting your clients at risk just to
Mm.
make your staff have a better day. You've got to measure both of those things.
Yeah. Um, follow on question from this, and it's a really interesting one. I've seen research that just less than a third of Gen Z workers have an aspiration to manage others. I'm concerned remote working will encourage I'm concerned remote working will encourage such workers to create portfolio careers and avoid progression to management. The questions are: have you seen anything around that kind of research, and what impact might remote working have on this generation that has aspirations to manage? And I think I know the answer here is that it's almost remote working doesn't remove that opportunity for management. It's just a different type of management, isn't it? In terms of managing in a remote environment. The portfolio career I think is really interesting, because I think we're at risk of that anyway, because
Yes.
people, if they're not in an environment, they haven't got to be there between 9 and 5. If
Mm.
remote working comes with flexibility in terms of, well, it kind of doesn't matter when you do the work, you can do it any hours you want as long as work gets done. There's a risk that we're creating opportunity for people to say, actually, I'm going to go and do something over here in the time that I'm not working for my employer. What's your thoughts on all of that, Tamryn? Sorry, there's a
Yeah.
lot there.
No, that's it's well, it's linked, and it's a very good question. So I think it's well, there's layers to that because that is one of the cons that we mentioned earlier, was this idea of career progression and mentoring and helping a young accountant to decide, do they want to go up the ladder, do they want to specialize, what do they want to do. And that sort of thing is much easier in an office because you're meeting with your team day to day, you're seeing their personalities, you're experiencing you can watch them react to specific types of work or specific clients in real time, which has a big impact as a manager in deciding who you're going to groom, who you're going to mentor, who you need to have a quiet chat with because they're not getting on with their colleagues, that sort of thing. So yes, remote work's going to impact that. And I think now when you've got, it's interesting, I don't know that research, but I can believe that Gen Zs are not aspiring to management. They're a very interesting generation. It was a completely different approach to work in the Gen Z mindset. And it's not necessarily a bad one. It is challenging for particularly for the most of us who are currently running firms as Gen X or millennial. Very different mindset, and we do battle to fit the Gen Z into our current work models. And I think the only real answer is that we have to slowly change the work model, because they are the next generation. And if we want our firms to last, we're going to have to fit them in somehow,
Yeah.
which is a long-winded non-answer, really. But also, I think under my third pillar there, I have relationship management. So one of the challenges of remote work is building a company culture and doing things like team building and increasing engagement and that sense of community, which those things make a very powerful business. If your team actually feels like a team, if they're rallied behind your vision and they believe in your values and they care about the company, they care about the culture, you have an unrivaled accounting firm. They are going to provide amazing service to your clients. So that's something you'll aim for. That's much harder to build in a remote environment. It's very, very difficult to build in a remote environment. And that's also going to affect the Gen Z, because I think what we have to think of as well is there's a lot of youngsters who come into an office who have aspirations for management who shouldn't be managers. There's a lot of youngsters who come into an office who never had aspirations of management, and actually they'll be amazing leaders. And that's been going on for generations. That's not just the Gen Zs, where it's the job of the current leadership to recognize good leaders of the future and groom them into that position and help them to see why they would make a good leader, why they would make a good manager, or why they would make a bad manager, and what they need to improve on, what they need to work on. And none of that can be done without a good relationship. So you have
Yeah.
to build your relationships anyway. And again, it's although it's harder in a remote environment, it can be done if it's thought out and planned properly. If you realize this is something you need to do, and you actually do it proactively, because I think in offices it tends to happen more organically, and in some cases, as a result, we actually promote the wrong people because we haven't thought about who we should promote or why we're promoting. I mean, I see it a lot, actually. A lot of accountants are brilliant accountants. And because they're good at the accounting, they get promoted. And they're going to take the promotion because it comes with more money. So no one's going to turn it down. But they're good accountants. They're not good managers. It's an entirely different skill set. And
And
I think
not always good client managers either. So
exactly, yes.
it's not just it's about not just team, it's about managing those client relationships as well. And they might be great accountants, but aren't able
Mm.
to have the kind of conversations we should be having.
Yes, and we're not comfortable with them, or bad with people. Some of us are just outright bad with people. We went into accounting because we like numbers. We didn't want to be people facing. That's then
Yeah.
you would have gone into hospitality. So I think that's something we need to also take into account when we're looking at our future generations or our succession planning, and
Yeah.
not just rewarding someone because of their title. You keep, if someone's a happy as an accountant, is a happy as a senior bookkeeper, if they're a brilliant senior bookkeeper and they don't actually have aspirations to change, you
Hmm.
can actually still reward them according to the value they're bringing to your business without giving them the title of a manager. And the
Yeah.
same way, you can go find someone who does have leadership ability and does have that skill and drive, and an amazing ability to deal with clients and staff and workflows and all these things, and put them in a position of management. And I think that's why I say I think it's about building a new way of working, which our old mindsets battle with. We,
Yes.
we, we used to hierarchies. We understand a hierarchy. This is a far more, I don't know, Venn diagram way of building, and
Yeah.
it's not easy, and it requires planning.
Yeah. Okay. So we've jumped around a little bit here in terms of legally ready. What's the key there, Tamryn?
So I think it's again, that's just, this is very much a tick box exercise. You
Yeah.
just want to make sure that you haven't just said to people, yes, sure, work from home. Here's a laptop, off you go. You need to make sure that their employment contracts stipulate what that means, if it's flexi hour or not. You can allow someone to work from home, but they must work between 8 and 5. That's still remote working. It's just not flexible remote working. They're
Yeah.
different things. So it's just about making sure that you have made your requirements very clear in your employment contracts, and that you've checked your requirements, your personal preferences against your labor law, and made sure that they are compliant, so that you're not going to get yourself into trouble at some point in time. And not just labor law, but your company law, your general law. Are you actually making sure that everything you're allowing your staff member to do is not going to get your firm in trouble down the line?
Yeah.
Is
So
really.
it's about clarifying expectations, isn't it? In terms of
Mm.
this is yes, you can work remotely, but these are the terms under which you're working remotely. These are the expectations. These are things that you must do in the same way that there will be expectations when you're in the office. And I think the culture bit comes into this as well, isn't it? Because the culture bit's kind of the unwritten rules. So how does our culture extend into that remote working? as well.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Yes.
so we've got the tech, we've got the equipment, we've got the security, we've ticked the boxes in terms of making sure that everyone understands what the expectations of them are from a contractual point of view, and then it's the bit we've kind of touched on, which is probably the hardest bit. I think box one and two are largely we need a checklist and we need to be able to tick them off and say yes, we've done that, we've done that, we've done that. The third bit, which we've talked a bit about anyway, is the key, isn't it? Really, this is where you can have all the contracts in place, you can have all the software in place. You get this bit wrong, this is where it could all fall over. I know they're all important, but is that a fair view there, Tamryn?
Yes. Sorry, my internet froze for a second and I got bits of that, but I think what you said is this is the most difficult section and the most important.
Yes, that's it.
Okay. So good old remote connections. See, there's a
Yeah,
challenge for you. But yes, this is definitely in terms of, but I think this is an area where, like we said earlier, you want to get this right for your firm, whether your staff are sitting in your office or
yeah,
they're sitting at home or they're sitting in another country, it doesn't actually matter. This is actually this last pillar is actually about building a firm. It's about your internal processes more than it's about remote work.
yeah,
And it's about how you enforce your quality standards, your expectations, your outcomes, and your profitability as a company. How are you actually making sure that you're achieving the outcomes that you want, not just for clients, but for
yeah,
you as the firm owner? So, yes, it's the most difficult, it's the most complex. And it takes the longest. It's going to take, in terms of when we're talking planning, this is the one that you really want to spend the time on. The others, like you say, are
yeah,
tick boxes. Are we going to provide a computer? Are we going to pay for internet connection? Who can we
yeah.
find someone who can train our staff in cybersecurity, procedures? These are tick
Yeah.
boxes.
What
This
what
one,
are well, sorry, Tam, what are some of the practical things that firms should do in this section to increase the likelihood of success and achieving that improved productivity when you've got people working remotely? So what are kind of the top three things that firms should be doing when they're running a remote workforce?
I think you absolutely need standard operating procedures. You can call them anything you want. They can be ways of working, staff manual, the internal textbook, but you need set ways of working that you have actually documented, that can be easily replicated, that any new person walking into your firm, you hand them or email them that set of procedures and they can do their job unhindered just
Mm.
by following those steps. I
Yeah,
think that's your first thing, absolutely,
yeah,
that you would need. And then you want to be able to assess those procedures against specific outcomes. So you need to also know what it is that you want your clients to experience. You need to know that. You need to know what a good result is, what an excellent result is for your clients. That needs to be a very clear picture that you present to your employees in terms
yeah,
of what is a happy customer. What does that mean? It's maybe it, depending on the firm, maybe it's just getting a return in on time.
yeah,
Where if you're a 100%, you're a bulk compliance firm, you've got 500 clients and you've just got to get tax returns in and they know this is what you are, then getting a return in on time is a happy client. That's your outcome. That's what all of these procedures need to work towards. But on the other side of it, you might be an advisory firm and a happy client is someone who's increased profit by 10% year on year
yeah.
because
Mm.
that's the outcome they're looking for. So you need to know that. You need to know what you consider to be a good job, a good result, And you've got to be able to tie that back to those SOPs, because the third thing you have to do is develop a monitoring system for yourself, for as a manager, knowing what am I looking for at what time
Mm.
in
Yeah,
order to get that result using those steps.
excellent. Marvelous. Thank you for that. I'm conscious of time. So, in terms of the things that you can do to support people with this, Tamryn, what does that look like? How do you support current firms in terms of getting remote ready?
Well, we have so the fourth little one there is support and assistance. We do have a remote ready package where we can run you through those pillars. We walk you through the checklists. It's probably about a 3 or 4 month process where we'll actually help you to do the tick box exercise, but also to think through the more complex side of things that we can do. And then we also do offer the offshoring and the outsourcing, which we obviously wanted to make very clear in the beginning. That's not what this webinar was about. But if you've decided that you don't want the hassle of finding staff and training and onboarding, but you would like them to become part of your team, we can find those for you as well. We do provide training along the lines of what makes a good remote worker. We provide training for firm owners on how to manage remote workers. It's all part of our offshoring and outsourcing packages. So that is, and it can be provided separately as well if you just want the training.
Excellent. Thank you, Tammin. If anybody has any questions, please pop them in the Q&A box for us. We've got a few minutes left to tackle any of those. Is a question here, Tammin, is there a smallest amount of work, stroke number of people you recruit for a small and growing practice? Can you provide individuals working at less than full time?
Yes. So essentially, when it comes to our offshoring service, what we're doing is we're finding you the team members you want. That's what we do. So we will manage them in terms of a labor law perspective, but they integrate into your company and they become your team member. And because of that, you can pretty much put your stipulations on that job. We will go find the exact person you are looking for to work under the guidelines that you want them to work for. So if that's a part-time employee, that's what we'll find you. If it's full-time, that's what we'll find you. If you want someone who's going to come in 3 days a week, that's what we'll find you. That is the offshoring option.
Yeah. So this is very much about whatever it is you might be looking for as an in-house resource. This is an alternative to somebody to deliver the same outcomes and the same outputs, because that's what we should be focusing on here. So regardless of whether that's somebody sitting in your office or somebody sitting in the UK or in South Africa, the principle here is that it shouldn't matter. If you're
Correct.
clear on the inputs that you need to achieve particular outputs, then if you struggle to find somebody to work part-time in the UK, then this gives you a route to a dedicated member of a team, your team, for you to manage in whatever way you want to, but with the added advantage that Tammin is there to support with finding those people and managing those people almost from a
Yeah.
remote point of view as well. This is a point that Tammin can provide an element of that remote workforce management for you, and support you getting the most out of that resource. So that's a principle of this.
Correct. Yes, you said that way better than I did. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Cameron. Does anybody else have any more questions for us? Whilst you do, there's a couple of QR codes there for information, and I think there's another one popped up here. So let me do that. Do you have an optimal tech stack for, say, a small accounting practice with 5 staff, 50 clients? Ones I've heard: Ignition for client onboarding engagement, Carbon for practice management, Workflow Zero. I can answer this one, but you'll have a view on this as well, Tamrin. So Ross, this is stuff that I talk about all the time. Effectively, our system is we use Zero and Dext for our bookkeeping. We do daily bookkeeping for about 60% of our client base, and we're using Dex and Zero to do that. We do use Ignition for client onboarding, for billing within our practice, and we use Carbon for practice management. So pretty much what you've suggested there is what I would suggest. Uh, the carbon is very scalable. I work with lots of smaller firms that are using Engager for practice management, that tends to do much more at a less focus level. So Engager, for example, will do proposals, but it won't do proposals as in depth as Ignition would, for example. But it will give you a combined set of tools that will scale with you certainly to a reasonable level. We've gone through various practice management solutions, from building our own to using Center to move into to Carbon, and Carbon just scales nicely with us. So that and our whole practice is run by Carbon now effectively. So happy to connect with me on LinkedIn and drop me a message. Happy to chat about that if there's things we can do to help with that. Any comments on that, Tamryn? I mean, you're predominantly a QuickBooks practice in South Africa, aren't you?
Yes, yes, I'm a QuickBooks fan. So we use Dext and QuickBooks Online. We do work with Zero, but not rather sadly, let's put it that way. I just love my QuickBooks, but I think that's a matter of preference in terms of maybe history and what you're used to. Um, and in South Africa, QuickBooks works particularly well. So we use Dext and QuickBooks. I actually, we actually manage our entire practice in Asana, which is not a
Okay.
practice management
Yeah.
tool at all.
But it's
It's
a
a
workflow tool and a project management tool, isn't it? Yeah.
correct, yes. And what I've done is I've just set up every client as a project in
Yeah.
Asana. So, we use the project brief to give the background, and the contact details. And we've got there's I think a notes page in Asana where
Yeah.
we just update, what's happening with the client and that sort of thing. So for us, that works really well. We're a small team. I've got a very small practice. We're also only 5 people.
Yeah.
In total. So for us, that works perfectly. Whether it's scalable is another question. I think I
Yeah.
have experienced Carbon, and I know Carbon definitely in terms of scaling. If you're wanting to grow, if you're wanting to get bigger, then
Mm.
Carbon is definitely a good
It grows
option.
with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Uh, no other questions at the moment. So with that being the case, I'll start to wrap up. So firstly, thank you to everybody for joining us. Hope this has been useful. Tammin would very happily, I'm sure, pick up a conversation with anybody if you have any follow-up questions, even if you just want to ask some more questions about how this works practically. Tammin, we're very happy to do that. So do connect with Tammin on LinkedIn. Tammin, thank you for joining us and sharing your expertise and pulling this together for us. Always good to chat. So thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and we hope to see you on another webinar in due course. But thank you all for joining us, and thanks again, Tamrin. We will see you all soon. Thanks very much indeed. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Will.
Bye.